They got it wrong. For 2,000 years, we have been looking at the wrong thing. We see the nails, and we think, that is the point. The iron through the wrists, the spike through the feet, the crown pressed into the scalp, the blood running down the wood. We see the physical agony, and we think, that is what Good Friday is about. But it was never about the nails. It was never about the wood. It was never even about the cross. What happened on that hill outside Jerusalem on a Friday morning 2,000 years ago was something so much deeper, so much more devastating, so much more personal, that the nails were almost incidental. And if you have never understood what Good Friday is actually about, stay with me, because by the time this is over, you will never look at that cross the same way again. Let me take you somewhere first, before the hill, before the soldiers, before the nails. The night before. A garden called Gethsemane, olive trees, moonlight, silence except for the wind moving through the branches. 11 men were sleeping nearby. They had been told to stay awake and pray. But the heaviness of the night, the weight of what none of them fully understood was coming, had pulled them under. And alone, among the roots of ancient trees, a man was on his face on the ground. Not kneeling, not sitting quietly in prayer, on his face. The Gospel of Luke says he was in such agony that his sweat fell like drops of blood. This is a real medical condition, hematidrosis, documented in cases of extreme psychological distress. The capillaries beneath the skin rupture under the pressure of what the mind is carrying, and the blood seeps through. He was sweating blood. Before a single soldier touched him, before a single nail was lifted, he was already bleeding from what he was about to carry. And he prayed 3 times the same prayer. Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Let this cup pass. That phrase, that cup, is the key to understanding what Good Friday is actually about. He was not asking to be spared the nails. He was not asking to avoid the physical suffering. He was a man who had walked willingly toward Jerusalem, knowing exactly what was waiting for him there. The cup he was asking about was something else entirely, something far worse than iron through flesh, something the nails could never capture. To understand the cup, you need to understand something that most Easter sermons skip over. The Bible uses a specific phrase in multiple places to describe what Jesus became on the cross. He became sin. Not sinful, not a sinner in the ordinary sense. The Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthians, says it with devastating precision. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us. He became sin itself. Think about what that means. Jesus, who had never for a single moment in his entire existence been separated from God, who had lived in perfect, unbroken communion with the Father since before time began, whose very identity was rooted in that relationship. I and the Father are one. He said it himself. That Jesus, on the cross, became the concentrated weight of every wrong thing every human being had ever done or would ever do. Every act of violence, every betrayal, every moment of cruelty, every private shame, every public failure, every thought and word and action that had ever separated a human being from the God who made them. All of it placed on him. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, actually. And at the moment that happened, at the moment that weight landed on him, something occurred that had never happened before in all of eternity. The Father turned away. We know this because of what Jesus said from the cross. Not at the beginning, not in the first hour when he was praying for the forgiveness of the soldiers, not when he was speaking to his mother or to the thief beside him. At 3 in the afternoon, after 3 hours of unexplained darkness, he cried out in the language of his childhood. Loud, raw, stripped of everything. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? He did not say, Father. In every other recorded prayer of Jesus, every single one, he called God Father. It was the most natural word in his language, the most intimate, the most defining of who he was and who God was to him. In that,
I want to talk to you about something that nobody talks about on Good Friday. The silence of Saturday. Because we move so quickly from the cross to the empty tomb, we rush through Good Friday toward Easter Sunday as fast as we can, because the resurrection is the good part, the triumphant part, the part that makes the story bearable. But the disciples did not know there was a Sunday coming. They experienced Saturday, a day of complete silence, complete darkness. Everything they had believed in, everything they had left their lives for, in a sealed tomb behind a Roman-guarded stone. Peter, who had sworn he would die before he denied Jesus, had denied him 3 times and wept bitterly and hidden himself somewhere in Jerusalem. John, who had stayed at the cross, was in a house somewhere trying to take care of Mary, who had just watched her son die in the worst way the ancient world had devised. The others? Scattered, frightened, behind locked doors. And none of them knew what we know. They did not have the benefit of 2,000 years of hindsight. They did not know that Sunday was coming. They did not know that the sealed tomb would be empty before the week was over. They just had Saturday. And Saturday was the longest day any of them had ever lived. I tell you this because some of you are in a Saturday right now. Not literally, but spiritually, emotionally, in the deepest place where you actually live. You are in the space between a Friday that broke you and a Sunday you cannot yet see. Something died. Something you believed in. Something you built your life around. Something you thought was going to be different. A relationship. A dream. a version of yourself you had planned to become, a faith that used to feel alive, that now feels like it is sealed behind a stone. And you are sitting in Saturday, wondering if Sunday is real, wondering if the silence means abandonment, wondering if the darkness has a morning on the other side. Here is what Good Friday says to you in your Saturday. He was in Saturday too, not just metaphorically, physically. His body was in a tomb on Saturday. The one who had said, "I am the resurrection and the life," was lying in complete physical stillness in a sealed cave on the side of a hill. Silence, darkness, stone. And yet the story was not over. Because what looked like an ending was not an ending. What looked like the final word was not the final word. What looked like the complete and total defeat of everything that had begun in a manger in Bethlehem 33 years earlier was not defeat at all. It was the middle of the story, not the end. I want to ask you something directly. What are you carrying today that you have been telling yourself is too much, too broken, too far gone for God to reach? What is the thing you have been holding at arm's length from your faith because you cannot reconcile it with a God who is supposed to be good? What is the wound that you have quietly concluded is yours to carry forever because you cannot imagine any way through it? Good Friday is the answer to all of those questions. Not a neat answer, not a comfortable answer, not an answer that ties everything up with a theological bow that removes the ache, but an answer. The answer of a God who, when faced with the full weight of human brokenness, did not step back from it. He stepped into it. He felt every nail. He drank every drop of that cup. He experienced the full silence of the Father so that no human being who cries out in darkness would ever have to wonder whether God knows what that feels like. He knows. From the inside. He chose it. The curtain tore, and that tearing was God saying, "The distance is over. The barrier is gone. Whatever you thought was standing between you and me, it has been dealt with. Completely. Finally. At enormous cost. Come. Not when you are better. Not when you have sorted yourself out. Not when you have repented enough or prayed enough or been faithful enough for long enough. Come now, as you are, wherever you are, whatever Saturday you are living in. Come. There is a reason this Friday is called Good. Not because it was a good day in any ordinary sense. It was the darkest day in human history. A man who had done nothing wrong was subjected to the most brutal execution the ancient world had devised, while the people he had come to save watched and mocked. There is nothing good about that in any superficial reading. But it is called Good Friday because of what that Friday made possible. It is called good because of the curtain that tore, because of the debt that was stamped paid, because of the abandonment he experienced so that we never have to be truly abandoned. It is called good because on the other side of the worst Friday in history was the best Sunday that has ever come. And that Sunday
is coming for you too. Whatever Saturday you are in, Sunday is coming. Drop a comment below.